the Osirion, and then realized all covered up with sand, and then Seti put in the sandstone casing blocks, and probably the blocks that are behind the sandstone. You see over here, they sort of put in these packing blocks behind here. My conviction was that this is originally on floodplain. In other words, like Stonehenge. This is initially not cut into the ground. It's on at ground level. And one of my questions when Schock first got signed on board was, is that rock back there? It looks like kind of very rough, crummy rock, or is it impacted Nile silt? And Schock took one look at it and said, oh yes, this is impacted Nile silt.
The floor of this temple is a good 50 feet below the floor of the temple of Seti I. Geologically, there might be another explanation for this. I think it's possible that this temple is extremely old. It was built on the ground level, then, over thousands of years, from Nile flooding, sands and silts were brought in, which filled up the temple and eventually covered it completely.
And so it's known, there are geological studies that in very, very ancient times, different studies, and we have to look into these actually, we've not just had the time to do so, 12,000, 14,000 years ago or thereabouts, there was Nile floods much, much higher than today. You see, today's floods would only have gone up to the very bottom of the, where we left the bus. That's where the floodplain came up to. Well, here we're way above that level here. And that's all impacted Nile silt. So at some point or another in the distant past, there were Nile floods that took the sand level, that took the silt level up to here. So now it's a question, when we were here last, Chuck and myself, we took some unofficial samples there, because you can date Nile silt because it's got organic material in it. So ballpark, when you get back that kind of age, it tends to be not too accurate. But in theory, we should be able to date that silt. That doesn't tell us exactly when this was built, but it does tell us when the silt is laid down. And if this is there before that, well, then we're on to something very difficult for the, for the academics to simply dismiss that kind of evidence when you add it in with all of the other kinds of evidence. As the father of history, Herodotus, wrote in the 6th century BC, concerning Egypt, I will now speak at length, because nowhere are there such marvelous things, and in the whole world beside are there to be seen so many works of unspeakable greatness.